Hi, welcome back. So the title of this mini lecture is the 1970s in American history. And we're going to talk about 5 things that you need to know as you go to do more reading and research about the topic. So there's a lot of history about the 70s, even though it is a fairly recent time in America, from the works of Bruce Schulman, Kevin Cruz, to any number of others, looking at a wide variety of topics. So again, there's a lot to it. It's a complex decade with a lot there. So let's dig in. First off, Roe v. Wade. Okay, Roe v. Wade was a Supreme Court of the United States decision. It was a court case that ruled that abortion was legal for women up until the 3rd trimester of a pregnancy. Now, whether you are someone who today in the 21st century is pro-life or pro-choice, the thing to think about would be the manner in which we debate that as a country, or maybe that you debate it amongst family or friends or with other institutions. Much of that debate is influenced by Roe v. Wade. So it's good to know, kind of where some of that comes from. Again, that's not a statement in support or against. So as a function of the national conversation, you did not have, in terms of that much when it came to women's reproductive rights and public health and this kind of thing, right? Roe v. Wade is really kind of where this nationally becomes a big part of the public conversation. All right, number 2, Watergate. Okay, Watergate. Some of you may have seen the movie Forrest Gump and may have seen the film mention Watergate for a moment, and I know sometimes that's all that folks know. Watergate stands for a hotel and office complex in Washington, D.C., but that particular hotel and office complex is significant because the Democratic Party's national campaign headquarters was located there, and there were individuals loyal to the president at the time, Richard Nixon, who broke in and tried to bug the offices to investigate the offices. And so they were carrying out a break-in, and they were caught. And the later trial of those men and the investigation surrounding it by journalists, notedly Bob Woodward and Carl Bernstein, ultimately contributed to what were known as the Watergate hearings and eventually the movement to impeach President Nixon and his eventual decision to resign the office of the presidency in 1974. So Watergate is quite a significant part of the story of the 70s. And if you're curious really where we get this sense of political apathy in the country, right? This idea of a decline of, feeling that your vote doesn't matter, feeling, bad about all politicians, even if you like what they're saying. Much of that comes from the 70s. Much of that comes from everything surrounding Nixon and particularly Watergate. All right. Third, Saturday Night Live. Saturday Night Live. Whether you're someone who's a fan of comedy or not, the transformation of and the growth of television in America in the 1970s was a pretty big thing in terms of American pop culture. Saturday Night Live, when it debuted in 1975, was a strong connection back to some of the counterculture thumbing your nose at authority in the 1960s, and really great political comedy and commentary that the national conversation could be around. All right, so Saturday Night Live. Fourth, OPEC. So this stands for the Organization of Petroleum Exporting Countries. Now, OPEC and their nation's members became pretty famous in the 70s, partly because of the actions they took around the global oil supply, both in 1973 and 1979, partly because of U.S. support for Israel and for other foreign policy issues in the 70s, you ended up seeing declines in supply, which meant that prices went up, which meant that gas lines existed in America. So if you talk to somebody who would have been able to acknowledge this, particularly in '79, they would have seen these gas lines, had to wait for gas a couple of hours, that kind of thing. It's a very different understanding than today, given our renewable energies and, other stuff that we got going on. All right, number 5, Jerry Falwell. All right, Jerry Falwell. So part of the rise of conservatism at the end of the '70s meant the rise of the form of evangelicalism. So new Protestant Christian churches, which were very public about and political about their faith, and they tended to share this using the platforms of the late '70s and early '80s. So an individual like this would be a guy named Jerry Falwell, and he had what was called the moral majority, which kind of pushed his interests and his views on faith and how American society should reflect his views on faith and the moral majority's views on faith. And they were relatively popular for a while. All right, thanks so much.